You're listening to the Dead Presidents Podcast.
And this is another episode of Presidential War.
Presidential War. What is it good for? Intellectual stimulation. Say it again now. Presidential War. What is it good for? Presidential
Welcome to the Dead Presidents Podcast.
I'm Stephen Lincoln Douglas.
I'm James J. Hamilton.
I'm forever intruding on James J. Hamilton's lines.
That's okay. We are here with another episode of Presidential War. We have our cards dealt, shuffled, cut, ready. Battle lines are drawn.
And we are prepared to flip the first hand, which reveals Herbert Hoover
And for me, Thomas Jefferson.
in the category.
The category, biggest partier.
Well, I don't think there's really much of a question here. Hoover was a homebody. He preferred to stick at home. He was so private that he and his wife would speak Mandarin at home.
So their servants wouldn't know what they're talking about, or other people.
Yeah, there wasn't much. I don't think there was really any Hoover partying. I mean, Jefferson,
I think he knew how to have fun.
I think he did know how to have fun. He was a Francophile after all.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he had some good times over in France as a diplomat. Of course, serving the country by having fun with the French. He was a huge wine connoisseur.
Oh, yeah.
Spent obscene amounts of money on wine. And I've seen he'd write letters to people being trying to find particular wines and really going out of his way. He loved having dinner parties. He liked to have people over for dinner.
This is a clear Vic for Thomas Jefferson against the dour Herbert Hoover.
Yep. Move on to the next hand. I've drawn Ronald Reagan.
And I have drawn Teddy Roosevelt. The category, relationship with the Constitution. Well, now, my immediate inclination is to lean towards TR here. But we get into some pretty complicated territory with Reagan. There was a lot of, in my opinion, sketchy shit going on with Reagan and the Contras and the arms dealings and all that sort of thing. Roosevelt, a trust buster, speaking softly and carrying a big stick, trying to, post McKinley now, the Spanish-American War has made the United States, for the first time in its history, an empire. It's a global force now.
Yeah.
And with the Monroe Doctrine in tow, kind of sets out to double down on it. And say, yeah, we bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's a tough category. I think we've talked about it before, but I mean, your thoughts.
I mean, Constitution-wise, yeah, some of the Contra stuff under Reagan is in the more modern imperial presidency style. The president doing a lot of kind of foreign policy, Bay of Pigs type things without, declarations of war, kind of going on their own a little bit. I mean, also, Constitution-wise, Reagan, he put Antonin Scalia on the Supreme Court, his Attorney General, Ed Meese, and, Scalia and Meese and guys like that were part of kind of a new wave of conservative legal thinkers. Under Reagan's term is when the Federalist Society was founded in law schools as a group for conservative and libertarian legal thinkers to get together. And since that time, they've been really big. And under President Trump, it was kind of the Federalist Society was the brain trust behind all of his judicial appointments, and that kind of constitutional interpretative revolution began under Reagan and with his people. Originalism as a theory of interpreting the Constitution.
Would you say that's good or bad, James?
I mean, I'd say it's pretty good. I think now even liberal justices and liberal legal scholars will use originalism, and it's become pretty big.
What do you think about Teddy Roosevelt?
Well,
and his relationship with the Constitution? Because I think my argument here is that when it really comes down to it, if you were to go one against the other and you were to quiz them on the Constitution, the clear winner would be.
Well,
Roosevelt.
yeah, TR was like, probably a genius intellect of his own. Reagan more of a figurehead, but, I'm sure Reagan's, policy advisors could go toe-to-toe with TR's.
Yeah. Well,
Reagan
the point I'm trying to make is like in terms of a personal relationship with the Constitution to the president, like constitutional acts, and if there was anything questionable, yeah, we factor all that in. But them personally, in this regard, I don't know that I don't see Reagan winning this, just because I don't think that. I'm sure he had a basic grasp. But, I don't know, that's tough.
Yeah. I mean, I'm okay with TR winning it. It's close.
I feel like
they're both Republican titans.
Yeah, I feel like TR is the bigger titan.
Yeah.
And therefore he shall take the hand.
Next I have drawn Bill Clinton.
And I have drawn James Abram Garfield.
The category, the economy.
Well,
the Clinton year's known for a pretty good economy.
yeah.
Internet coming into prominence, invented by Clinton's vice president, Al Gore.
Yeah.
Personally responsible for inventing it.
Balance the budget.
Yeah.
Pretty good stuff, really.
Yeah.
You got to give Clinton credit for all that, for sure. Not too shabby.
Yeah.
As for Garfield, the nation had witnessed the worst economic depression in its history in 1873, and it was recovering. at the time Garfield was in.
Yeah.
It was turning around.
Mm-hmm.
However, I just think that due to the brevity...
Yeah, how long was he even in office?
Just a couple months, man.
Yeah.
You know, March to September of the same year. And
about
some of those months incapacitated.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't have that much of an edge on Harrison, but, like, I have such a high regard for him that I don't know. I would argue Garfield's case a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I think, you know, basically by this point, your favorite presidents, James, are more of a mystery to the listeners, but I think that my 3 favorites have become clear to our SETI listeners.
Yeah.
Those true amongst us. Those real dead presidential patriots.
Yeah, listeners, write into the podcast and tell us who Stephen Lincoln Douglas's 3 favorite presidents are, as he has revealed on previous episodes, to prove that you've been listening.
And guess what James's are? 'Cause he hasn't really said.
I love all the presidents.
Well, as do I,
We'll
but
see.
you gotta have favorites.
Yeah, I don't know. My favorite is whatever one we are doing our episode on, pretty much. I have fallen in love with new presidents every couple weeks now.
Well, that's pretty cool, but I wouldn't say that it reflects well on your steadfastness
Yeah.
of character.
Yeah. I'm a floozy going from one president to another.
Yeah, the solidity of your judgment is questionable, sir.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
We're having a great time. I mean, listeners have probably forgotten what the hell was going on at this point. And what was going on was Bill Clinton had just beaten James A. Garfield in a hand of presidential war.
On the economy.
The economy being the category.
The next hand, I've got Andrew Johnson.
And I've got Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
The category, foreign policy.
Well, there's no real argument here. I don't think Andrew Johnson had much of a foreign policy, and FDR was pretty heavily foreign policy at the end.
FDR,
half,
yeah.
FDR. The latter term and month.
Yeah. He presided over us, being on the road to victory in World War II.
That's the super important thing to remember about FDR. If FDR had gotten elected in 1940 and then gotten reelected and died a month later, he'd probably be considered like the greatest president of all time, hands down, no question about it, because it was just his third term was the greatest single term success, really.
Well, I'd probably still say Lincoln would probably have him, because he did serve one term during a war and then die immediately.
That's true.
After re-election.
Yeah, and that was a month as well. So if you put it that way, it's like 2 super strong one-term fellas coming in again and getting killed after a month.
Yeah.
By man or God.
Mm-hmm.
In Roosevelt's case, he was assassinated by God.
Yeah. Andy Johnson, obviously taken over after Lincoln, assassinated by man. Didn't really have major foreign policy things going on.
No, not really. I don't really think there's much of a question here.
Yeah, it doesn't hold a candle to FDR.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next hand. No need to dwell on that.
You won that hand? You tried to take my hand.
I tried to take the cards. Next hand, I've got George H.W. Bush.
And I've got Gerald Ford. I hope this comes down to football.
Their category, looks. Maybe even a more dominant
I gotta give it
win
to
for Jerry Ford.
Yeah. Like, young Jerry Ford, like, he was, like, the perfect all-American, like, prototype male.
Oh, yeah.
Blonde hair, blue eyes, strong, tall. He's athletic, obviously, the #1 presidential athlete.
He was a model on the cover of Cosmopolitan magazine. Look that up, listeners. Google Gerald Ford, Cosmopolitan magazine.
Yeah.
But do it when you're alone. George H.W. Bush, you know, he's pretty good looking himself. He's tall and handsome.
Kind of homespun, decent fella kind of charm.
Yeah.
He's in this scenario, Gerald Ford is Matt Dillon, and George H.W. Bush is Festus.
Yeah.
I'm not going to detract from either one. They're both charming in their own way, but there's a clear-cut victor in the one that you want to shack up with.
Yeah.
And that's Gerald Ford.
Indeed.
And I think with that Gunsmoke analogy, we could claim the hand for Gerald Ford.
Yep. Next hand, I've got me some Millard Fillmore.
And I've drawn Dwight D. Eisenhower.
The category, relationship with Congress.
Well, this is one I think we must consult the complete book of U.S. presidents on. Because, well, we had some things going on here. The Compromise of 1850 with Millard Fillmore.
Yeah, Fillmore took over upon the death of Zachary Taylor when the Compromise of 1850 was in the works over whether slavery should extend to territories acquired in the Mexican-American War. Congress put together a compromise that was going to allow, well, what? California came in as a free state, Oregon was a free state, and then the rest of the Southwest slave states.
Or states could decide.
Yeah, or they could decide for themselves. Slavery would be allowed. And Fillmore signed off on that. Taylor was kind of pushing back on it a little bit before he died, despite being a slave owner himself. Yeah, I mean, no, Fillmore was not elected. He came in kind of on his heels. Henry Clay and so many titans in the Congress at this time put this together, and he kind of just went along with it.
Well, and he held his own, but I think Eisenhower is going to take the hand for the gravitas of what he was going through. You got the end of the Korean War. You got the Eisenhower Doctrine. Because, as a result of the Cold War, you got Joe McCarthy, his fall from grace during this period. Brown versus the Board of Education, like early civil rights stuff going down under Eisenhower. Eisenhower is starting to pave the way for civil rights. Kennedy would get more credit. Johnson would get more credit. Eisenhower kicking it off, really.
Yeah. Civil Rights Act of 1960.
That's right.
And the interstate highway system.
Yeah, I mean, he got some things done.
Huge.
The highway system, a great boon for everybody.
Yeah, he was pretty popular for a long time.
Yeah, I think Eisenhower will take this one.
Yeah, I'd give it to him. Next up, I draw John F. Kennedy.
And I've drawn Richard Nixon.
Campaign opponents. Category?
In 1960.
Ooh, First Lady looks.
Well, as in 1960, JFK's gonna win this one.
Yeah, listeners, Google Pat Nixon. You know what Jackie Kennedy looks
I'm not
like.
saying Pat Nixon's, like, unattractive.
No, she's,
not, like, she's not even lower tier of, like, first ladies, but Jackie Kennedy is, like, one of the best.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Pat Nixon's pretty good looking, too, especially when she's younger, and Nixon had a couple of good-looking daughters as well.
Indeed.
Good genes in the Nixon family.
Mm-hmm.
But Jackie Kennedy...
Yeah, you gotta give Jackie one of the most attractive first ladies.
Oh, yeah.
Hands down.
We'll leave the listeners to look at the pictures of those first ladies in their own time and do what they will with them. Meantime, we'll move on to a new hand.
Indeed.
I'm drawing William Howard Taft.
And I have drawn William Henry Harrison.
The category: who would win in a fight?
Yeah, Harrison's been in this category before, and the discussion was, well, is it when he's president? Or maybe it was with football.
Yeah, he was in football category before. Who were you picking flag football?
But yeah, it's like, well, when he was president, because if it was when he was in his prime...
Yeah, he was a military officer, a frontiersman.
Yeah, he would, like, have Taft, like, pretty much gutted before he could even, like, turn.
Yeah. Yeah, by the time he was president, he was old and obviously only lasted a month, so wasn't in great health at the time.
Yeah.
Taft,
a big dude.
Huge, over 300 and some pounds. Probably not a lot of stamina or agility in the fight.
Yeah, probably not. It's hard to say just because of where you want to place them age-wise in this, because I don't think that President William Henry Harrison could
he's
make
virtually
a dent on Taft.
Yeah, he's virtually near death for the entire time he's president.
Yeah, so, presidentially, it's definitely Taft.
Yeah.
You see, some of these categories just kind of come down to, how we're feeling, whether we're going to place it, in their presidency or just, overall. If you want to do it overall and they're both at their, peak physical condition, William Henry Harrison.
Yeah, definitely.
No question about it. And, basically up to and including, not up to and including, what? Yeah, kind of up to and including the pre-presidency, because Harrison was out there, the first presidential candidate in history to be out there fucking making speeches and, touring around and getting involved and taking to the stump in a presidential race. That had never happened before. He was definitely showing that he still did have vigor.
Yeah.
And it's just a couple bad storms that he got caught in.
I think I want to give this to Harrison, because even when he was old and frail and ended up dying, he was out there exerting himself physically. He gave the 2-hour inaugural address. Even though he died, he wasn't afraid to.
Well, he was fine. That he gave the address.
He was.
And then he got a cold, and then a couple weeks later, he was recovered, and he went out every other morning to grocery shop.
Yeah.
For the White House, and got caught in another storm at one point, and got a chill because his clothes got soaked and he got held up and spent too long in damp clothes and bad news bears.
He was in the Army. He knows how to fight, I think. I think even an old, frail William Henry Harrison could probably outfox and outlast a big, fat William Howard Taft.
It's a distinct possibility. we're going to give this to Harrison?
Yeah, I think so.
Very good.
It's not a sumo wrestling match.
Indeed.
Next hand, I've got Rutherford B. Hayes.
And I have drawn Barack Obama.
Category, relationship with the media.
Well, this seems a little bit clear cut.
Yeah, I mean, vastly
Because,
different medias during
Obama,
these times.
Well, yeah, vastly different medias, but at the same time, each side is holding court over their own principles, you know.
Yeah,
Obama was a media darling
yeah,
and was super successful at it and an incredibly popular guy.
mm-hmm. Yeah, you had your Fox Newses and conservative outlets who attacked him, but in general, he was pretty beloved
Indeed.
by the media.
In the media at Hayes' time, yeah, he had his defenders, but for the most part, everybody was really, 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 really kind of harboring 1876.
Yeah, he lost the popular vote to the Democrat Samuel Tilden. Post-Civil War, the Republicans dominated. But then, you know, the country was very sectional, so I'm sure Hayes not, you know, getting love from the Southern media.
Right.
And, yeah.
Which is why he made it a little deal.
There's definitely no Rutherford B. Hayes cult of personality like with Barack Obama. Barack Obama, you know, going on, you know, Jimmy Fallon, slow jamming the news. He's on Between Two Ferns, he's on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee.
And Rutherford Hayes could have done all of that.
Yeah.
Alas. But,
We'll never know.
I don't know. I just think that initial negativity,
Yeah.
it didn't help.
Yeah, this is going to be
This is
Obama's
gonna be an
category.
Obama hand.
Next, I will draw James Monroe.
I will draw Warren G. Harding.
The category, Best President Overall.
Well,
That's going to be
I don't
Monroe,
think I really need to make a case
Yeah.
for Warren Harding. I think this is a clear victory for James Monroe, like without any question whatsoever.
Yeah. Monroe, he's got the doctrine. He acquired Florida. Shepherded through the Missouri Compromise.
Yeah, depressions aside, I mean, Harding's administration's pretty riddled with scandal.
Corruption.
Not the return to normalcy that was expected.
No. He doesn't really get high marks from
It
anybody.
would take his successor to really turn things around and clean shit up and put the country back on a track towards greatness and, indeed, one of the greatest times, if not the greatest times in American history.
The Coolidge administration.
It wasn't Harding. So,
Yeah. Harding generally rated near the bottom in rankings. Monroe near
and he
the
warranted.
middle to above average
Right.
category.
Yeah,
This is pretty clear cut in Monroe's favor.
indeed.
Next hand, I've got John Adams.
And I've got Benjamin Harrison.
The category, domestic policy.
Well, now, Benjamin Harrison had a so-so domestic policy. He was able to, there was a nice Republican stronghold. He was able to get some veterans bonuses for those who had been in the Civil War. That was popular amongst veterans, but not so popular in the South. And it was kind of party-drawn popularity in terms of Harrison's domestic policy.
Yeah. Well, I think we had John Adams on this category before.
Well, I mean,
we
got to bring up the Alien and Sedition Acts.
Yeah. John Adams may his biggest success more in foreign policy with
Indeed.
the XYZ affair and settling the quasi-war with France, but part of that war was the Alien and Sedition Act.
Yeah.
Sedition Act making it a crime to criticize the government, passed in a anti-war hysteria, or a potential war hysteria.
It's not a great look.
No.
To, jail people for talking against the president. Not a good look.
Yeah. Other of his domestic policy, putting down the Fry's Rebellion, Pennsylvania, resistance against tax collection, Adams pardoning John Fry's the leader. Also, domestic policy, including the midnight appointments. He got Chief Justice Marshall in there. A hugely consequential appointment.
Yeah.
Made the Supreme Court a big deal. Kept the Federalist Party's constitutional ideas alive in the Supreme Court for another 30-some years.
Indeed.
Yeah. Economy was doing pretty great during the Adams administration. Not that there was any particular big reforms that he did, but things are pretty good at home.
Yeah.
The Sedition Act aside.
Yeah, as for Harrison, you have the Sherman Antitrust Act. Trying to curb the abuse of monopolies.
Yeah, that's pretty huge. That's the basis of all the TR trust busting.
That's kind of more foreign policy, though. The Sherman Silver Purchase Act is a more domestic policy that would be repealed 3 years later, so it was a short-lived, though at the time, successful policy.
Yeah.
And the McKinley Tariff, another.
Yeah, I feel like we might have had Harrison on this category too. Or maybe it was the relationship with Congress, because we were talking about these same pieces of legislation.
With Congress, but it's the same kind of issues that we're going over.
Yeah.
These were domestic issues. Yeah, that's kind of a tough one. Does Benjamin Harrison's domestic policy warrant victory over John Adams? Does John Adams win him out despite the Alien and Sedition Acts? I feel like John Adams was president at a much more integral time in history.
Yeah. But, his biggest things were foreign policy-wise, I think. I feel like maybe just Harrison had more going on, or at least more new reforms and things that he did domestic policy-wise.
When I think of the halcyon days of the United States, I think of, when Ben Harrison was in there and not much was going on.
Yeah.
That's
which is,
those are like the halcyon days.
Yeah, it's not as exciting to think about from a historical standpoint, but that's kind of the time period you want to live in.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you like to be able to look over, the past 4 years of your life and think, no, there's not much going on government-wise. Things are kind of...
Things are okay.
Yeah.
Not too
if
shabby.
that's what's going on, then domestic policy has to be pretty effective.
Yeah.
I feel like
giving this to Ben Harrison?
Yeah, I think I would.
Very well.
Next up, I have drawn Zachary Taylor.
And I have drawn William McKinley.
The category, effect on the office of the presidency.
Well, we have two guys that died in office. We have a slave owner that turned against his own ilk
Yep.
to support something that he felt was constitutionally correct. But on the other side, we had the president that created American empire.
Yeah.
Even if it was at the behest, the poking of Hearst.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's going to be the greater effect on the presidency.
I think so.
He, the president now considered the leader of the free world, and America's stepping out onto the imperial stage. I guess is part of that, and making the president a big deal. And you see how TR coming right after McKinley really throwing his weight around on the world stage. He made peace between Russia and Japan, was mediating disputes in South America, and
indeed,
that's the new imperial presidency that came into effect after McKinley's imperial wars.
Indeed. Yes, and I think this one's going to go to McKinley.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak too soon, but I feel like I'm doing okay for the first time.
You look like you may have a lead, but we'll see what happens on this next stand, because I've got George Washington.
And I've got Harry S. Truman.
The category, most like to meet
Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's... Yeah, I mean, sorry listeners, there's not going to be much discussion when it comes to the chance that George Washington falls in the most like to meet category, because he's going to take it every time.
Pretty much.
Of any president, like, are you serious? You're not going to want to meet George Washington?
I mean...
First and foremost?
Maybe Lincoln, but Washington would be right up there.
I don't know. If it came down to, like, you could meet one of these two, George Washington or Abraham Lincoln,
I'd probably choose Washington.
I think I'd have to choose Washington. The mystery of the man, you'd get to experience him.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you wouldn't unravel said mystery any further, but by God,
he just like
what an experience it would be to converse with General Washington.
Yeah, such a godlike figure. Just to be in his presence, would be awe-inspiring.
Yeah, and Harry Truman's not a bad draw in this category either, to be honest. He would be a really awesome person to meet and hang out with, but when it comes to Washington, he takes the cake.
Indeed.
Yeah, no doubt.
Next, I've got James K. Polk.
Another nice draw. And I've got his mentor, Andrew Jackson.
Ooh.
Let's see if Polk out Jackson's Jackson in this category.
The category, who would you pick first in flag football?
Not this time. This is a Jackson hand.
Yeah, this is going to be Old Hickory beating Young Hickory.
Yeah, hands down. There's no question there. That's one thing that Young Hickory did not live up to Old Hickory in the sense and in regards of physical strength.
Yeah.
Polk always pretty sickly and
pretty
had a habit of overworking himself. I mean, he was pretty much 100% devoted to his task at hand.
Yeah, pretty short and thin. Jackson, tall and thin, a military figure, served pretty tough as nails guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, he earned the nickname Old Hickory.
Yeah.
He earned the nickname, I want to be clear.
Mm-hmm.
The nickname Young Hickory was bestowed upon Polk. It wasn't for any type of,
Yeah.
physical exploit or military exploit. It was Jackson felt that he was the loyal Jacksonian Democrat, the nice.
Yeah. He was going to carry his
toe in the line.
Yeah, he was going to carry his
Successor.
policies into the next generation.
Indeed.
Not his physical toughness.
Yeah, when it comes to a game of flag football between these two.
Yeah,
It's Jackson.
Yeah, Jackson got shot in the chest during a duel and still stood there and aimed and killed the other guy.
That's right.
That's the kind of determination you want on the football field.
Yeah. Indeed, and that's going to bring us around to Franklin Pierce.
Versus Calvin Coolidge.
And we have...
The category military accomplishments.
Well...
That's one where Pierce might be getting the better of Silent Cow.
Yeah, Pierce might be getting the better of him. Pierce obviously actually served in the military and was a brigadier general in the Mexican-American War. His service did come under some question, but it was pretty much discarded. And overall, he was considered a fair general. Not great, but not as bad as the Whig press made him out to be during the campaign of 1852.
Yeah.
We'll put it that way. Now, let's move on to taking points away from Pierce during his presidency, military accomplishment-wise, because this is the only way we're going to be able to factor Coolidge into it, because he didn't serve in the military. Mm-hmm. So, the Pierce presidency, you had a great shame bleeding Kansas. Basically, civil war breaks out in Kansas. Not a good thing. It's kind of an anti-military accomplishment that he wasn't able to rein that in better.
Yeah. Coolidge didn't really have much in the way of military accomplishments. He didn't serve in the military as president. He didn't really have any military, big issues. No wars or anything happening. Maybe the only thing, when he was governor of Massachusetts, he sent in state troops to help break the Boston police strike. So
a great boon for his career.
Yeah, that was a big thing for him. Stood for law and order, though. Yeah, not presidential, but
yeah. The only other thing I could think of is maybe under foreign policy with Coolidge, because we had American vessels over in Chiang Kai-shek's Revolutionary China.
Yeah,
but nothing outside of little skirmishes.
Yeah. So with Pierce, the bleeding Kansas thing is bad, but it's maybe, I don't know, only tangentially a military thing. Yeah. I feel like he served the country in the Mexican-American War as a general. He probably ought to win this category.
I could go with that.
Yep. I've got Honest Abe Lincoln.
I've got Woodrow Wilson.
The category, speeches and writings.
Well, I mean, there's a lot for both of them. I just, personal preference, I'm going to say Lincoln, because Wilson's kind of a wishy-washy character, because, I mean, the dude was pretty loathsomely racist.
Yeah. Yeah, and Lincoln's speeches and writings just, like, so much more consequential.
Yeah, I mean...
Wilson was, he was an
beyond.
academic, and Lincoln's words are just, American scripture.
Right.
The
I'm not going to
Gettysburg
say
Address.
that Wilson couldn't win this category against people, but he's not going to win it against Lincoln.
Yeah. Gettysburg Address, the, House divided speech, the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Lincoln, he's the shit in this category.
Indeed.
His second inaugural address was huge. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations.
Indeed. That's right, listeners. No question here.
Yep.
This hand is made for Honest Abe.
Yep. Stephen Lincoln Douglas has 2 volumes of Lincoln's speeches and writings in his personal library.
Indeed. And they're fantastic reading.
And then,
Always good for perusal. Any writings of our presidents.
yep. Next hand, I've got Chester Arthur.
And I have drawn second term Grover Cleveland.
The category, relationship with the people.
Well, just, that's tough here. Because we've talked before about Chester Arthur really not being well regarded by the people. And then when he became president, he started to get some respect.
Yeah.
But he never enjoyed the popularity that Cleveland did, and that's despite second term Cleveland's shortcomings
Yeah.
of the term. Cleveland was still not unpopular. I mean, his term, by the end of it, I mean, he wasn't nearly as popular as he was when he got re-elected president.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, Arthur...
the triumphant return of the Clevelands to the White House was pretty huge. It was a big deal.
Yeah, Arthur, he took over from vice president after Garfield died. He never got elected president, which is, a major sign of the people's love. Cleveland had that happen twice.
Yeah, and Arthur's, pre-presidential career was riddled with, what a lot of people considered, questionable things.
Yeah.
And so he didn't come into the presidency, embraced.
Yeah.
He came into it with the spirit of suspicion
Yeah.
from the people.
As
of, oh, God.
this is the kind of
He's going to
machine politician.
Turn this whole thing over to Roscoe Conkling and the political machine of New York. This is going to be terrible.
Yeah.
But he brings down the people
He
that
was
made
a
him.
pleasant surprise, but he didn't, he didn't get renominated to serve a term in his own right.
Not that I don't think he would have taken one anyway. Because
Yeah, he probably didn't
little
want to, but
known to the public, but Arthur knew at the time he was dying of Bright's disease.
Yeah.
And he did not live long enough after his retirement that he could have served out a term in his own right. Anyway.
Well, Cleveland, he got elected president once, then the people turned to Benjamin Harrison, but then 4 years later they started thinking, you know what, we want Grover Cleveland back.
Popularly vote for Benjamin Harrison.
Well, yeah, Cleveland won the popular vote.
Yeah.
Right, too, yeah. Cleveland won the popular vote 3 elections in a row.
Yeah.
He's got to take this category big.
I think so.
We've got next category. I've got first term Cleveland.
And I've got John Quincy Adams.
We're doubling down on the Cleveland.
Indeed, just missed them going up against each other.
Someday.
Someday.
The category this time, pre-presidential accomplishments.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to knock Grover Cleveland as mayor of Buffalo. He was the executioner, too. He was a hangman. He had his own thing going. He was really close mates with Teddy Roosevelt. They were known collectively as the Big One and the Dude.
Nice.
He was a popular guy. But John Quincy Adams pretty much is made for this category.
Yeah.
His pre-presidential accomplishments eclipse just about everybody else.
Yeah, pretty much
because
anyone.
From his youth, he was groomed into political service to his country, and he held a lot of positions throughout his life. And we've talked about it before, like, his life of public service should have culminated in a really solid presidential term. It just didn't work out for him. And then when we get into post-presidential accomplishments, he rates highly there, too.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, he started, he was just a teenager when he was secretary to the ambassador to Russia.
Yeah.
And then himself was ambassador to the Netherlands and Prussia. He was in the Senate. And then he was maybe the best Secretary of State ever.
Yeah. He
had another diplomatic posting, too.
Followed in his father's footsteps.
Right, yeah.
As Minister to Great Britain.
Right, yeah, that's the one I forgot, Minister to Great Britain. And he helped negotiate the Treaty of Ghent, ending the War of 1812.
He's also integral in the Monroe Doctrine.
Yep, as Secretary of State.
So... yeah, I think this is a pretty easy victory for JQA.
Indeed. Next up, I've got James Madison.
And I've got James Earl Carter Jr.
Their category, post-presidential accomplishments.
Ooh, well, hey now, Jimmy.
That could be one of his best categories.
Absolutely. Jimmy Carter's post-presidential accomplishments are wonderful humanitarian efforts. And God bless him for all that he's done. For his Habitat for Humanity work, and just all of it. I don't think there's a question here. We've talked about... I think James Madison has come up in...
Yeah, I think he's come up in this multiple times in the past. I think this is now the third time we have him in this category.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm repeating myself by saying, again, Virginia Constitutional Convention, University of Virginia, Board of Directors.
At least another time with this.
And spoke out against nullification in 1832. The, wise old sage. Jimmy Carter has, as of the date of our recording, the longest post-presidency of any president.
Indeed.
He's 96 years old right now.
And he's been making the best of his post-presidency with his wonderful humanitarian efforts and his phenomenal books.
Yeah, and this is being, ex-president is where just being a really nice, great guy can really serve you well. Like it might not carry you through the presidency, but as an ex-president, great. One knock, I think, if I recall correctly, I heard one thing that he did as ex-president, which was not that great, is in I forget what context it was in, but at some point he casually mentioned how many nuclear warheads Israel has, which was like a huge secret that he knew as president that was not supposed to come out, but that he may have accidentally let that slip at some point.
Wow.
But other than that, pretty solid.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. He was on Home Improvement, working hand in hand with Tim the Toolman Taylor and Al Borland.
Yeah.
Pretty good guy.
Yeah, James Madison wasn't on any sitcoms.
Indeed not. This one's gonna go to Jimmy Carter.
In
Winning
upset
over
victory.
James Madison. A nice come-from-behind victory for Jimmy Carter.
Next up, I've got George W. Bush.
And I've got Ulysses S. Grant.
The category, Strength of Presidential Appointments.
We got some notches against both of these guys. Grant's presidency was plagued with scandal due directly to his trusting the wrong people and making the wrong appointments.
Yeah.
It was Grant's friends that pretty much fucked his presidency. Like, I don't know that he had an appointment that could make up for the fact that his other appointments were bad enough to really taint his presidency pretty badly. I mean, it took quite a long time for Grant to be, like, reevaluated in history. I don't think it was until Ron Chernow and his book that we really got, like, a really solid reevaluation of Grant, but even that doesn't...
Yeah, that doesn't excuse him
it doesn't
for
excuse
his reliance.
his poor judgment in political appointments. And George W. Bush...
Yeah, I think we talked about him in this category before.
People there too, but on the reverse, there was some okay people in there.
Yeah, we had him in this category before too, I think, and we had.
I believe so.
Yeah, we felt like Colin Powell was pretty solid.
And
Condoleezza Rice.
Wasn't
some
too
good
bad.
diversity in the Secretary of State office.
Rumsfeld, I don't like.
Yeah, that was the appointment that we felt came to bit him in the ass because the Iraq War obviously did not go very well for a while.
Cheney.
Yeah.
It was kind of a doo-doo head.
Yeah, by the end of Bush's second term, Rumsfeld was gone and Cheney was had lost influence. If you watch the Christian Bale Dick Cheney movie, that's kind of the arc, is that by the end of the term, they're not listening to him anymore.
Yeah.
And, the end of Bush's term, he got, General Petraeus in there, helped start turning things around in the war a little bit. And he had Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Alito, pretty solid Supreme Court picks.
I guess one way to look at it, too, is that if you think of these guys, like, coming into the presidency, one of them really had to rely more on their appointments than did the other. Grant, he didn't so much have to rely on the people he chose. He was a goddamn hero.
Well, yeah, I mean...
So, pretty much...
Yeah, but he was a hero.
Bush had to make some, like, really good choices, whereas Grant was like, okay, alright, sure.
Yeah, but Grant was a hero as a general, and he didn't really... think he was that great or that experienced in politics, and I think that's what kind of bit him, is he didn't know who to trust, whereas Bush, at least, he grew up in politics, and he knew who to trust, because there were a lot of guys who his father had trusted.
Yeah.
And he at least knew, knew what people to pick.
Yeah, I think I'd give it that. I mean, I don't have any questions about this one. I think this goes to W.
Yeah. W taking the category. Next up, I have got John Tyler.
And I've got James Buchanan.
Their category, First Lady Accomplishment.
Good Lord, with Buchanan and First Ladies.
Man, yeah, he's coming up in the First Lady category practically every game. We talked about Buchanan never married. His first lady was his niece, Harriet Lane. John Tyler had 2 first ladies.
One died in the White House.
Yeah, his first wife, Letitia Christian Tyler, she suffered a stroke, I think, and was kind of ill for most of her time as first lady. Then Tyler, about his last year in office, infamously married a woman 30 years younger than him, who really took to the office of First Lady through a huge party and had like a public relations team getting her name out there.
First Lady Julia Gardner Tyler absolutely relished that role.
Yeah.
Whereas Harriet Lane served with a quiet dignity.
Yeah.
And, as we've said before, was the first to be called the First Lady.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. I'd say Julia Tyler, her tenure was short and flashy. And given that Letitia was in ill health the whole time, not many First Lady accomplishments happening for the first 3 years through, no fault of her. But
yeah.
I'd probably give it to Harriet Lane on this one.
Yeah, I would agree.
If Julia Tyler had been in there for 4 years, she might have made more of a mark on it.
Yeah, she probably would have had more of a Dolly Madison type impact, I think.
Well, yeah, she could have.
Lively, vivacious, partying, party-throwing type.
Yeah, that's what she...
Right about Dolly, really.
Well, Dolly was there on the Princeton the day that Julia's father was killed.
On God.
And she fell into Tyler's arms.
Not Dolly, but...
Yeah.
Julia.
Mm-hmm.
Just in case. Imagine that Dolly fell into it. Anyway.
Yep.
We're down to the last hand, listeners.
The final hand. I have Lyndon Johnson.
And I have Martin Van Buren.
The final category. Least scandals.
Johnson's definitely been in this category before.
Yeah, because we talked about Vietnam being a scandal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, technically.
Like Lyndon Johnson, didn't he whip his dick out to the press at some point? And that's not even...
I don't know to the press.
I thought it was. It was to somebody.
He would do that to opposing congressmen and shit.
Yeah.
He was always flaunting his huge guy.
Yeah, didn't somebody didn't his answer to why are we in Vietnam as he whipped his dick out and said this is why we're in Vietnam?
I don't know.
I think that's at least a story that's said about him. But didn't necessarily become a scandal at the time, although perhaps should have.
No, I mean, he was a really brazen dude, and he used his size to intimidate people, and he used his dick to intimidate people. Straight up, on God. There was protests and shit going on in Van Buren. I mean, you had pretty harsh economic times, and you had the opposing press really starting to gather itself and start to put out political cartoons lambasting Van Buren as this hoity-toity aristocrat drinking fine wine while the rest of the country is suffering, and he's got, his white horses and his gold carriage and his golden chalice and all this and that. And
yeah, Congressman Charles Ogle with the gold spoon oration, where he lampooned Van Buren for supposedly having over-the-top, renovations and stuff in the White House.
Yeah, and I mean, really, but, the things we're talking about on either side, not necessarily scandals.
Yeah, not squarely.
They're kind of scandalous reports, oh, how scandalous, but not outright, this is a serious, scandal, this is a legal, issue.
Yeah.
Nothing really for either of them in that regard. Johnson's tape of him ordering pants didn't come out while he was president.
Yeah.
It was years later, thank God.
Yeah, go on YouTube and look up Johnson ordering pants.
Yeah, you won't regret listening to that. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I feel like Johnson had personal things that, could have and should have become scandalous if they were more widely known. Whereas Van Buren had his most scandalous things were probably things that were, blown out of proportion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Van Buren didn't have people camped out on the White House lawn, taunting and jeering.
Yeah.
Of course, different times, but...
Yeah, I'd probably give
it's
this...
It's iffy, because there was also people that when LBJ was president, there were people that thought that he had something to do with not only JFK's death, but also RFK's death. Was for some reason, the LBJ keeps, he's suspect in these things.
Yeah, well, he didn't get along with RFK.
Right, notoriously did not get along with him.
Was that publicly known much of the time?
That they didn't get along?
Yeah. Or at least, maybe some of the depths of it. That probably could have been a scandal, too, because people loved RFK.
Yeah. Well, I think it was a problem.
Yeah.
But all the deets weren't quite so clear as now.
Yeah.
I think this one's going to go to Van Buren.
Yeah, I agree. I think I also read a thing recently that I didn't know, that apparently maybe LBJ would be flirting with and maybe even groping other women right in front of his wife. Maybe not widely known, but I heard that. Should have been a scandal. Yeah, I think Van Buren ought to win here.
It should be.
So, we have come to the time when we will count up the cards and see who won.
That's right, and you guys get to listen to this really awesome piece of music. With the results, James J. Hamilton with a total
of 14,
and myself with a total of 30.
A crushing victory.
Me, the champion of war, bound now. And I kicked your ass until it was sore, now, 'cause I am the champion. I am the champion. No time for James J. Hamilton. 'Cause Stephen Lincoln Douglas is the champion of war.
Until next time, this has been the Dead Presidents Podcast.
Thanks for listening. Okay. Thanks for listening.